Hello and welcome to Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Moorea, a 16-year-old girl from New York. And here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Balancing Act. So, this is another solo episode to send us into the new year. And the last one was like wrapping up 2024, and now we're in 2025. And I recorded the last one when I was on winter break, and now I'm in the final hours of winter break and have to go back to school tomorrow. And honestly, I did not have an episode planned until about 2 hours ago for what I wanted to release because sometimes that happens. But then I was thinking about what is important to me right now, what is important to the people around me right now, and I was like, you know what? What's really important to all of us right now is the fact that we got to go back to school, but like I kind of don't want to go back to school, you know? I was visiting family and I was looking at the sunset and I was talking to my brother and we were like, why do we have to go to school? Like, what is the point? And I feel like there's this point at the end of every longer vacation, at least for me, when the seconds are like ticking down and time is just like, and you just don't want to go back to school. And I started working on some stuff for school again, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, why do I even have to do this?" Right? And I just think about how stressed I am during the school year. And it's like school is my life, school is everything. And then on breaks, I step back and I reflect and then I'm like, "Oh, it's just school." And then I all of a sudden, I'm thrown back into the middle of everything. And I'm like, "I don't like school. Like I don't like this stress. What is it all for?" Does anyone ever feel like that? And I'm creating this episode as a reminder to myself and to everyone around me to keep the perspective of like, what is school in your life? How important is it to you? And just not letting yourself completely get absorbed into it in a way that can be unhealthy because reality is we live in a society where we do need to go to school. We do need to learn things. We do need to put in effort. We do need to do all the things. But then just not letting yourself get completely consumed by it and making it your life. Because I know for me, when I've done that in the past, yes, objectively, it looks better on paper when you're putting in effort and you get higher grades or whatever. But the emotional consequences of that, for me at least, have been extremely severe. So this episode is a solo episode with things kind of thrown into it of different people who came on the podcast giving their insights into how to really maintain the bigger picture, how to approach school, how to approach the stress about colleges, and then how to just go about doing this in the most strategic way while maintaining the bigger picture and what you actually want in your own life. So, starting off, the first clip is going to be from Dr. Lisa Demore, a clinical psychologist who came on the podcast. And we talked a little bit about college. And she told me what she thought about college and all the pressure that people feel to sometimes get into like the top colleges, pressure that I know people around me face a lot. And then also how to approach that and approach the reality of what you need to accomplish if you want to get into one of the top colleges. So here's what she said.
There's no question in my mind, and I really am honest about this. What you do in college matters more than where you go to college. By the time you're about age 25, nobody knows where you went to college. All that is still left is what you did with the experience. You could go to Princeton and do an okay job with it or not do an okay job with it. By the time you're 25, no one will know you went to Princeton unless you're the one bringing it up, and how hard you worked and what you learned is actually gonna be what you're riding on. You
Yeah.
could also go to a very accessible college, and if you work hard, learn a lot, that will show in what you're doing at age 25. If you're like, "But I do wanna try to go to Princeton," I'm not gonna stop you. Realistically, you probably do need to get incredible grades. Like, that is realistic. You also could get total straight A's, spectacular scores, all but cure cancer and not get into Princeton. Because Princeton's admission rate is around 5%, which means 95% of the applicants are turned down, and probably 95% of those guys are totally qualified. So it's not that it's not an option, but it's not something you can make happen by working hard. And so I feel like if that's what you want to shoot for, go for it, but be very realistic that no matter what you do, the odds are stacked against you. Okay. So a person might say, like, I still want to go for it. I still want to put myself in a position to do it. Okay, that's fine. Then you need to be as strategic as you absolutely can about getting the best grades possible while doing the least work available. So if you are like shooting the lights out, have a really high score in a class and can afford to like not do as well on the next test, put all your energy somewhere else. Think of it like a video game. You want an A in every class? Okay, what's the least amount of work you have to do in each class to get that A? I'm not going to tell you don't try for the A if you want the A. So that's one approach. The other approach is to say, you know what? I could do all that, and there's still no guarantee by any measure that I'm going to get what I want in terms of college admissions. Good news is our country is drowning in fabulous schools that will readily admit you. So there's another version where you just say, I'm going to do my darndest. I will go to college. I will learn and grow the whole process all along the way. I will live a rich, full life. And I don't need to stay up all night seeing if I can get A's in every class. If it means you can't sleep, if it means you're sick, if it means you're miserable, is it worth it? Given that you are well positioned to thrive at
Yeah.
any college you go to and to thrive after going to any college.
I really like what she shared in that clip, but if I'm being honest, the first time I heard it, I'm like, "What?" Like, there's another mindset to approaching college that isn't like get an A in every class and go to one of the top colleges. But then I thought about it and it really resonated with me. And it's like, you know what? What I do in college matters more than where I go, which is what she said. And that takes a little bit of the pressure off. And something that I want you all to keep in mind while listening to this, what she said a lot is like, if you're like this, if you think this, if this is what you want, so it's about each individual and what is right for each individual and weighing like the pros and cons of each approach. But then when it comes to the grades, if you do want to get into one of those top colleges, I know at least for me, I can get so obsessed with like just being perfect on every single thing I do. And it's like my ego, my everything is riding on every single one of my grades. Like, if this essay isn't perfect, that means that I failed. If this other thing isn't perfect, that means that I failed. And it's just like complete perfectionism with everything. And so, another thing that I always bring myself back to is something that I shared in another episode, and I'm going to share it again. It's an analogy from this amazing woman, Susie Botal, who talked about ADHD, organization, and just decluttering your life. And it really helps you to reframe that perfectionist mindset. And I really, really love it. So here it is.
If you think about a pizza, there is so many varieties. You could have one that's a really cheap frozen one that you can just put in the oven, or at the other end of the scale, you could make like homemade dough, homemade sauce, that you could take hours over this pizza. And actually, when you look at the pizza spectrum, I guess, you think, oh, well, obviously the best ones are the ones where you spend the hours over and it's the flavors and everything. But actually, imagine if you've been on a trip and you come home and it's 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, you're so tired, you're hungry. The best thing at that moment is a pizza that you can put in the oven, 15 minutes, done, and eat. Because the goal in that situation is just to feed yourself and maybe go to bed. So even though a wonderfully crafted like essay or pizza or whatever it is feels like, well, of course that must be the perfection that I'm aiming for. actually in some situations, the need isn't for best flavor, the best detail, whatever it is. The need is actually survival and I just need to eat something. So when you approach a piece of work, think about what's the point of it? What is your objective? Is it to write the next groundbreaking thing that's going to be published all over the world? Or is it just to get through that next module at school and just, yeah, that's good enough?
So, as I shared before, I really struggle with the idea of something being just good enough. And I know that other people also struggle with this idea of wanting everything to just be perfect. And it can feel a bit irrational and it can be really hard to cope with. But I guess sometimes the most perfect thing for a situation is just making it good enough so that you can save your energy, you eat like the frozen pizza for the situation, and then you move on. And then you can put that energy that you saved into crafting your next amazing pizza when it really matters. Because if we try to make the perfect pizza every time, like we're just gonna burn out and there's not gonna be anything left for what really matters. So, part of being smart about school and being smart in life is just putting your energy into what you deem to be the most important thing and putting your energy into what you can actually control. Relating to that, another amazing analogy that Susie shared when she came on the podcast was about a concept of glass balls and plastic balls and just determining what things you should be putting your energy into and what other things you don't have to be caring as much about or putting all of your energy into. So here's that analogy.
People feel like they're juggling so many things. Which of the balls you're juggling are glass, as in you just can't drop them? And then think about which ones are plastic. So, kind of identifying what things in your life are super critical to get right and to keep on track with, and which things you can maybe relax a bit or say no sometimes. So, once you've got your specifics, think about what is actually in your control and what isn't. Because actually, at the end of the day, the only things we can control are our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So, whether it's making sure you go to bed on time, making sure you eat well, get some fresh air, making sure you have a balance. So, yes, you must study and learn everything, but also protect your mental health. Make sure you do spend that time with your friends because that will help you decompress. So it sounds boring, doesn't it? Kind of control and balance, but just make sure you're focusing on the right things that you can actually control. We spend a lot of time focusing on things we can't control, which then means sometimes we miss the things that we can, like bedtime.
This also really resonates with me, and it's about what you can control and what you can't control. And control is another thing that I struggle with a lot. But college nowadays, it's become so competitive. And like Dr. Demore said, a lot of people who are completely qualified are turned away from the college. And that's the sad reality. And so sometimes I find myself and the people around me obsessing so much over college, but at the end of the day, it's not something that we have complete control over. So just recognizing what you can control and what you can't control, and then putting your energy into things that you can control can be really the best thing you can do for yourself. And this is a concept that I'm still trying to grasp. And so something Susie mentioned in that clip was bedtime, controlling your bedtime, having that be one thing that you can control. So going back to Dr. Lisa Demore, here's what she had to say about sleep and how we can use it to figure out if we have too much on our plate, because that can be the reality for a lot of teens.
You are supposed to be at your age getting about an average of 9 hours of sleep a night.
Wait, what?
I know. Way, way more. No, 9 for high school average.
I'm happy when I get in 8 hours. That's like
Okay.
my
So,
wow.
9's the average. I'm a big believer in if you're not able to get the sleep you need to take stuff off your plate.
Yeah, so as you can hear from that clip, when I heard that teenagers need like 9 hours of sleep average a night, I was kind of freaking out, and I am now. Currently, it's 10:40. If I want 8 hours of sleep, well, 9 hours is impossible at this point. If I want 8 hours of sleep, I have to go to bed now, but that's not happening because I'm still recording the podcast. So maybe I have to take things off my plate. Oops. Anyway, Here's what Dr. Afalabi Brown had to say about sleep on the podcast because it is one of the few things that we actually can try to control to some extent.
Teenagers need anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And I know many teenagers, in fact, research shows that about 74% of teenagers are not getting enough sleep. Sleep is not a passive process, it's an active process. So many things happen from memory consolidation to cleansing our brain of substances that it's been deposited over the course of the day. And then your immune system also undergoes rejuvenation during sleep. Your entire hormone balance and hormone regulation occurs during sleep as well. Certain hormones like growth hormone get produced in certain stages of sleep, and growth hormone is so important not just for kids growth but also for muscle and tissue repair and protein metabolism and things like that. Sleep is important for our cognitive function, so your learning, your ability to focus, your ability to make executive decisions, your ability to remember things. Sleep is very important for all of those. So when you lose the benefit of good sleep consistently every night, then that's going to get affected. And it's not to scare you, but to motivate you to make better decisions. You have to eventually say, the day is done and it's time for me to sleep. And when you set those boundaries and look at sleep like a non negotiable, it's incredible how better you become in terms of time management. So the kind of things you probably would have just done and dilly-dallied, now you're like, oh, absolutely not. I need to get into bed by maybe 10:30 or 11. So I need to put these things aside. And so it doesn't mean you're not going to get to enjoy the normal things you want to enjoy, hang out with your friends, hang out on social media, but you now have boundaries, which boundaries I feel are the most empowering thing for you because now you're in charge.
Yeah, so this really also resonated with me. And I know that, like, not everyone can get enough sleep in because of all these different things that they have to do. And so it can seem like, how am I actually going to get any enough sleep? Like, sleep is important, but then how do I make the real change? And I've still been actively struggling with this for basically all of high school. Like she said, setting boundaries can be so empowering. So, what I really want to do for myself is I want to set an alarm for bed and go to bed and prioritize sleep because that leads to so many other things, like being able to actually pay attention in school, not feeling so sleep deprived all the time, because that makes it really hard to focus and it makes it really hard to do anything really. And so it kind of relates to just like taking the power back and making the decisions for ourselves regarding sleep, regarding where we're going to put our energy, and just choosing what we're going to prioritize in our lives. And so I know for me, I need to probably cut out some things or at least tone down the amount of energy I'm putting into things, take the power back, and focus on my sleep because that is really important. And I want to prioritize that more. And so, to kind of wrap everything up, I'm going to be sharing a clip from one of my first episodes on the podcast with Dr. Hutt. It was about anxiety and tools for that, but something she shared that was really, really impactful and that I still think about a lot is this idea of having like a pie chart where you write out all the different components of your identity, who you are. For me, I put like cat lady, like aspiring podcaster, and just having a visual for who you are as a person and using that as a way to remember that college isn't your entire identity. So, this was an extremely impactful and empowering tip that was shared. And so, I just want you guys to listen.
We just want to help people to understand that school isn't your entire life, even though it really feels that way. And making sure you remember that all these other things are important to you and make you. Because I think we just get stuck with, oh, I didn't like get 100 on my test and therefore I'm a failure and I'm never going to college and I'm just going to like end up on the streets, right? And first of all, we can check the facts on that one. But second of all, there's a lot of other things that are important besides that one test.
Where I am right now, I'm going into my junior year of high school, so everyone's like college. I've got to tour my colleges. I've got to start really thinking about what I'm going to present to colleges.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it seems like so many other parts of our identity we're trying to like craft to make it like appealing to colleges. So it's like I'm an athlete. How is that relevant to colleges? I like film. How do I use that for college? How do you recommend we separate what we're doing like for colleges from like
Yeah.
what we're doing because we're passionate about it?
Yeah. It's such an important question. I think this pie, it's almost like something that you can see all the time because I think in the college process, you really can lose yourself a lot, exactly for the reasons you're saying. And it's just so stressful and competitive and awful. But I think being able to like open back to that page to be like, no, this is a real me. All these other things, it's like marketing, right? Or you're like, you're your own publicist in a way, right? You're like figuring out like, what is my public persona that I'm going to show? It's like if you were a celebrity, right? Like for everyone famous, right? What on their Instagram is not actually like what they're really doing on their like day to day. It's just how they portray themselves with good reason, right? They have a certain persona. And that's what you guys have to do, unfortunately, for college, right? It's like, okay, what is my college persona going to be so I can like look the best I can, which you guys have to do, unfortunately, and it sucks. And it's really important to be able to distinguish, okay, like here's the real me and here's like the stuff I'm going to say. And I think it's hard and it can get like jumbled and then you don't remember what's what. So having this, doing this for yourself, looking at it regularly to be like, no, this is the real me. All these things are important, not just that I'm going to like try to get a scholarship for my athleticism or whatever. And because of that, I have to pretend like that is my entire life, right? Which it's not. That's okay. And that is unhelpful in most parts of your life, except maybe on your college application.
So I think that's just an amazing way to kind of wrap everything up, tying back to this idea that school isn't my entire identity. Sometimes I have to pretend like it is, but then it's so important not to get it all like jumbled up and to remember, like, look at this pie chart, look at who I am as a person. I am not just that, I am so many other things that are not just my college application. And so, like, taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture can be so important and so empowering because that stress can be so extreme sometimes and you really lose track of yourself. And so tomorrow, yeah, I will be going back to school. That's the reality, that's the fact. And the fact is, over the next few months, I'm probably gonna get really stressed out over school. I'm probably gonna have times where I slip into feeling like school is my entire identity. But I really want this podcast to serve as a reminder to all of us that we are so much more than just school. And that at the end of the day, we have to take a step back and really think about what matters to me as an individual. What do I really want? How much of this is just pressure that I'm feeling from the people around me? And how much of it is just like all this pressure that's bouncing off walls and just amplifying and amplifying? And how much of it is what I actually want for myself? And then when we figure out what we actually want for ourselves, then we can put our energy into things that actually matter to us as individuals and reclaim that power, set boundaries for ourselves. Time is limited, right? Our energy is limited. We are not robots. And so we just got to choose for ourselves what we want to do. And then just keep our eyes like on the bigger picture. When I was with my family on vacation, I was like, I never want this to end. I can feel happy. I can look at the future instead of just looking at the next test in front of me. And so just kind of reminding ourselves of that feeling, I think can sometimes be so helpful. And so as we go back to school, just keep in mind again that you are so much more than your identity at school. And that if you're in high school trying to get into college, that is not the end all be all in your life. We have so much more going for us that we probably can't even comprehend at this moment because at least for me, I know it feels like I'm going to be a teenager forever and I never really look that far into the future. But we just got to keep in mind there's a lot out there for us. It's a big world and we don't have to take one specific track to success that all rests on having A pluses and getting into Ivy League schools. And so as we head into this new year at school, I want you to think about what are your priorities? Who are you? Make that pie chart. It's so helpful. What do you want to put your energy into? And how are you going to set boundaries for yourself to make sure that your energy is being spent in places that actually matter to you? So, with that, I will wrap this episode up. Good luck at school. Good luck in all aspects of your life. And again, Happy New Year. Thanks for listening to this episode of Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on our Instagram at balancingact.podcast and on our website balancingact.life. So please consider checking those out and giving our Instagram a follow. If you want to support the podcast, please consider subscribing to the podcast or leaving us a hopefully good rating on whatever platform you're listening to this on, because that would really be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find linked below. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, life's a balancing act and sometimes you're gonna fall on your face, but you're not alone.